weather and coming out. I really appreciate it. This is the last of the meetings. It's been a long month for me, I guess. And again, I'm just glad people are coming to get information. I always say, however people go, at least you're informed. I do want to thank Brad for coming up. Brad Cimarella is the architect that's been helping us. And so you'll get a chance to talk in a second here. But I think I was going to bore you for a bit and then let him take over kind of thing. So again, thank you for coming out. What I want to do tonight is just kind of, a lot of you have seen this presentation 3 or 4 times already. I think it's going to be very similar. We'll go through it real quick. If you have any questions, please ask. We'll also have some time at the end to ask questions. I'd like to tell a little bit about myself, just so you kind of know where I'm coming from. I live in Cullum. Kids go to school in Cullum. I'm from Ashley originally. I was born and raised in Ashley. I taught in Fargo for a number of years, but we just said, my wife and I decided, we want to raise our kids in a small community. We moved up to Bisbee, England. I was a principal and then superintendent for a couple of years up in Bisbee, England, which is north of Kansas, very small town. Kind of want to get back to this part of the state. My wife's from Lair originally, although I don't know that against her. And I'm from Ashley. So we moved to Cullum level 4, and then there's since I was principal for a number of years at Cullum High School, elementary for a short stint, and superintendent for a number of years. Superintendent Cullum and Wishing for a year. They had some issues, so I did them both for a year. And I've been here for the last 4 years. I really enjoy it here. Really enjoy the atmosphere at the small school and the kids. I've done a lot of work with legislators on funding in rural North Dakota. And I always tell it as a position, you guys have heard me say this, but agriculture is the number 1 industry in North Dakota. I mean, no matter how much we want to make oil, agriculture is the number 1 industry, and it always will be. So I think we need a strong rural North Dakota. If we're going to have a strong state, we need a strong rural North Dakota. I really believe that. So I am very passionate about small schools. I know how important they are. I know the quality of education we provide in small schools, and it is top. I love Fargo, but I wouldn't want my kids to go to school. And I think we get a much better education in these small communities. And so we're a necessary school. We really are. You guys, your district here is 500 square miles, which is crazy. Very big district. And it's needed. It's just needed. There are kids here that do very well here that wouldn't necessarily do well in a larger district. It's crazy how this district is growing, and I'll show you that in a second. So I think that we need to do whatever we can to make sure this school is here 20, 30 years from now. Personally, it doesn't matter to me because I won't be here 20, 30 years from now. I don't pay taxes in the district, and my kids don't go to school here. So I'm just here to give you information. You guys need to decide, the future of the district and the buildings, etc. So go ahead, Mr. Lee. I don't have your coverage. This is crazy to me. This is just the enrollment trends, and we know this will change quickly, but it's looking really good, and I have an explanation for it. I'm going to go back a few more years. This is just starting last year, but 5 years ago, maybe 6, you guys are 98 students, K-12. And I always talk about K-12 because that's what we get funded on. We don't get any money from the state for preschool. We were at 98. Last year, we were at 129, and now we're sitting right around that 135 mark. But the great thing is our elementary school is twice the size of our high school. There's twice as many kids in K-5 than there is in 6 through 12. So that enrollment is going to keep climbing. This isn't figuring any new people in. It's not figuring out when enrollment's coming in or anything. It's just what we have right now. So if you do the math, and if you look at this year we're going to graduate 6, but we have 10 preschoolers. So it's going to keep going up. If you look at 24, 25, you're going to get about 155 kids, which is crazy. And we can even take it one more year because that year you have still a small senior class. You graduate 6, but you'll have 12 preschoolers. So when you're looking at 25, 26, you'll have over 160 kids. I mean, that's just tremendous. And here's why I think that is. I think you guys are in such a good location. I mean, you can easily live in any of these communities in this district and work in Jamestown Valley. 30-minute commute. Matter of fact, a bunch of you do that. It's a disadvantage that like Cullum has. They're like an hour and a half from everywhere, so they're not really seeing that growth because not many people live in Cullum and are willing to drive an hour to Jamestown. So I think part of it is you're just in such a good location. I mean, as much as COVID's been terrible for us, it's been actually pretty good for us because people are realizing, hey, I don't want my kids to be in the big schools. I want to be in the small schools where we just kind of went on this normal. We're small enough where we could mitigate COVID and still be in student than 100%. So I think that rural schools have such an advantage, and I think that's why we're seeing our enrollments climbing. And you look at like the western part of our district, we have a lot of open enrollments coming in. 4 years ago, we actually had 35 more students open enrolled out of the district than we have coming in. We have now flipped that. We have more students open enrolled into the district than going out. And that is just, I think, a sign of what we're doing in the school and the tremendous education we're providing. So part of this is open enrollments, because we're not even figuring that yet. If you look at west and southwest part of our district, a lot of these families that now have preschoolers, kindergartners, they're open enrolling in our district. That's really cool to see, I think. So I think that 160 number is actually kind of low when you figure all those things in there. So definitely your enrollment trends are climbing. Again, I just think it's a lot to do with what we do here. Super staff. I just can't say it enough. When I say staff, I mean everybody. I was up in Walhalla Monday doing the training. I met a guy that was here, 10 years ago? Maybe he was here for a few months doing a internship as a counselor, and he's like, say hi to Liz. I mean, he remembered Liz because she's just awesome that way. So, I mean, it's not just the teachers. We have awesome teachers, but it's the entire staff. So we're so caring. We know our kids. Heck, we know our kids' dogs' names. I mean, it's an advantage in small schools. So I think it's just super staff. We've added things like math core, reading core, art, state test scores the last couple of years have gone up considerably because of programs like that. We're helping kids that are struggling to learn how to get caught up reading and math. And right now, our test scores are above the state average, which is really cool to see. The Voc Tech Center is kind of our second campus with students going up and learning those trades. Extracurricular, our numbers of kids participating in extracurricular is steadily climbing. I mean, it's really nice to see not just sports, we have a lot of kids playing sports again, but also speech and one-act play and Science Olympiad, which is going to be Coleman, right? So a lot of extracurricular. They do nurture part in elementary, full-time counselor, high school care committee to just to kind of look at the atmosphere, improve the atmosphere. Student-led is a great thing. Robot competition has been a really cool thing, teaching kids project-based learning, so to speak. Broadcasting studio, we have one, there's two of them in the state. We have one. Only two schools in the state have a broadcasting studio. We have a student that's a senior this year that I'm guessing is going to go on to a career in some kind of broadcasting because of that, which is awesome. Smart Lab needs building. A Smart Lab is just hands-on skill learning, bringing science, technology, math all together in one concept and teaching kids. I think we're the only country in the world that teach those subjects separately, and I think we're one of the few schools that have realized, hey, we want to teach science and math and technology together, because that's the way the real world works as far as engineering. Both of our buildings have a STEM lab that are used really, really well. Probably better in any place, I think, than in the state. Not much of our school program is very positive. I'll go ahead and see. I think you skipped the slide. Maybe not. Did I erase this slide? So my point is there's just so many great things going on in our school, and I say that because it affects our enrollment. That's what brings these open enrollments back. The atmosphere we've created here has been tremendous. That's what makes people want to come to our school, and so that's why I think you guys, you need to keep these students in these communities. You just, it's such a powerful thing. Really quick, and I'm going to have Brad talk a little bit, but just what's happened in the last 5 years. The amount of, I don't know, it's about a year ago, we were just talking about building and needs of the building, so I kind of started putting some numbers together, like what have we spent on the last 5 years on things that we probably wouldn't be spending if we were in a newer facility. We literally spent $591,720 on repairs. That is not counting, like we have these miscellaneous bills where we raise $115,000 a year. We've been using that for remodel projects, we remodel some classrooms, etc. That is not counting that. That's just repairs. Electricity, we average $3,336 a month electricity. Most of our buildings are heated by fuel oil, not electricity. That is an average, and in the summer we use very little, but that's an average over 12 months. So you can about imagine what the electricity bill is this time of year. Heating oil, we average $51,000 a year. Last 5 years we spent $260,000 in heating oil on top of electricity. This year, we will not get by with the 582, because what we're seeing, even the last 4 years that I've been here, it's like our heating system it's at its point where it's going quick. I mean, and is that common, rather? It's like, it's been okay, but now it's like it was at the point where it's just not cutting anymore. So our fuel expenses are going up because of that, because they're just not running efficiently. We have replaced some boilers in both buildings, but the problem isn't really the boilers, it's from the boilers to the top sheet, all the air handlers, etc. H.A. Thompson, they're the ones that manage our heating systems. They did the repairs for us. And we have spent, in the last 5 years, not counting this year, $127,000 just on repairs to the furnaces. We have already spent over $50,000 this year with H.A. Thompson. Part of that was because the state inspector came and said, okay, you have to start doing it. You have to start making some of these repairs. So we have already spent over 50. Have you seen a bill this week yet, Cindy? Have you seen the bill yet this week from HA? I don't want to see the latest. Yeah, because last week we had 4 different leaks in this building because it's a hot water system. We've had 4 different leaks, and I'll show you a picture in a second. So they were out here 4 different times in a week period. So another $10,000 bill. I'd be surprised if it's not that much. They're not afraid to charge. I'm sure you that. Go ahead. Okay, you can go back. Okay, go ahead. Okay, I'm still missing the clicker here. So I think that, all those things, we talk about the repairs, how much we're spending on repairs is crazy, but the problem is we're trying to maintain 2 buildings that are 100 years old. And it just getting to the point where, I think up to this point it doesn't work, but at some point the building is just at that point where it's almost beyond repair. So I just asked Brad to talk as an architect, just to talk a little bit about, okay, what would it take? Let's say this thing fails, and we decide not to go ahead with the new building. What would it take for us to bring these buildings to a point where they're going to last us more than the next few years? So, without further ado.
Thank you. Well, I'm here to talk about your buildings and answer any questions that you have. What we did was the board asked us to assess your existing facilities. So we came with a team of engineers, mechanical and electrical engineers, and we looked at everything that you have here and just assessed it. What do you have and what are you going to do with it? So just to talk generally speaking, you've got a structure that's older, a multi-story structure to the north here. So that structure is an older structure. It has different challenges and different problems. And they range from accessibility problems because of current codes and things like that to, for example, the brickwork on the exterior. So what happens to brick when it gets to be the age that that building is the mortar between the bricks turns to sand. And so you have to tuck point the entire building, and I think we did an estimate for that at one point, what that would take to tuck point the building. And then what do you have? You still have some of the issues of the older structure. We really like making older structures work because there are some advantages to them, but this one is just not functioning well for you, and it has all kinds of needs. This structure is newer, so we don't have the brick issues. It's got more of a modern mortar in the brick, but it does have other challenges. It does lend itself better to renovation because it's all on one level. And so our goal as architects is to look at what you have and make the most of what you have with what you have to work with. We looked at everything from building just a brand new school on a new site to evaluating both sites and how would they fit for addition and renovation. So we really looked at everything and just tried to assess where you're at. What we found here, and really at both structures, is that the mechanical systems have really lived their useful life and probably beyond. So that they've been maintained and repaired just as much as they could to keep them going. And good job for doing that, but they need to be replaced. They're inefficient. So that's, the mechanical system is really a big item. And then along with that, the electrical systems, the lighting. There's much more efficient ways to light spaces today that are less costly, less maintenance. You're probably familiar with the LED lights, and they last longer, they take less energy, and they're really flexible. So we can get all kinds of different light from them. So all of these things we looked at. This building, the newer building, really does lend itself to renovation. It's all on one level, and that's a good thing. You've got land here to work with, and so we looked at that. The cost to upgrade this building, if you don't do an addition, they're going to be extensive costs. They're going to be in the millions. They could be in $5 to $7 million just to get the mechanical and the electrical systems upgraded, because the mechanical system needs to be replaced. So that's a total replacement.
Right, I don't think I've told you this, but we had the fire marshal here about a week or two ago, and he is really starting to gig us on, let's be honest, the old part of the building has like one outlet in the whole room, or two, and that worked great in 1920. Today's world it doesn't, so we unfortunately run a lot of extension cords. That all needs to go. I mean, he gigged us and all that. I mean, you could run more outlets, but it's still on the same breaker, so the electrical is also a problem. We haven't had a chance to talk about that, so that would really need to be redone as well. And we're getting to the point where the fire marshal is going to say, yeah, this needs to be redone. I mean, I really feel that way in the whole part of the building, so that is also an issue.
So I mean, that's just a quick summary from an architect's perspective. So what we did then is the board asked us to look at what could be done at either site. And I don't know if you showed, did you show the slides?
It's a little bit later on in my
Okay. So I won't get into it.
Yeah, that's it.
But I think, is there anything else you want me to?
Yeah, that's the big thing for now. I just want everybody to understand that if we don't do this, it's still going to be a significant cost to keep the building going. So I'll grab you again when we get to that point. Thank you. I do think, well, for me, okay, I get it's about money and all that, but for me, it's still about education. And I just think the amount we could improve education by being in a newer facility and being in one site, it is actually crazy. I just threw a few things up here off the top of my head. We know that having a pride in the building increases educational output by like 15%, just that one thing alone. But you're talking about like title services. Our title services are, we get federal money, Title I money, to help students that are struggling. We currently have title services in the building in Litchfield, but we don't have enough title money to hire 2 teachers. But if we're in one building, she could easily serve all the way at least through 8th grade. Right now, after 5th, they come over here and it's like they're on their own almost. So it would be nice to have that title service continued, which we would if we're in one building. Jen, we know there's an extreme shortage of teachers in North Dakota. The best solution to that is starting to grow your own. We know that. JED is like junior education training, where you have like seniors in high school, rather than taking a study hall, they can take a class where they're actually down in an elementary room, kind of as a teacher's aide. And it actually gets a lot of kids into an education, and some kids are like, nope, don't want to do that. Well, that's important too, to figure that out too before you go to college. So I just use college as an example. We started JED probably in 04, 05 when I got there. And there was 4 teachers right now teaching there elementary that all came out of that program that were young, from Cullum, went back to college, came back to Cullum. So we know it works. Hard to do now, being 12 miles apart, but in one building we could do that. We could have one special ed room, one smart lab, so the amount, you could save money there. Travel time, every teacher that travels, you lose a period. We have 3 teachers that currently travel, so if they were in one building, and a counselor, if they were in one building, it'd probably be more classes we could offer. The connection, we have really, it's hard to have a connection between elementary and high school. If we're in one building, you need to have high school interacting with elementary students occasionally, that would help. You can go ahead and fast enough. Science lab, we know that in disrepair. I mean, our science lab, sometimes the propane works and sometimes the plumbing works, sometimes the water works. They never seem to work on the same day, unfortunately. But I mean, it's an old part of the building, it's 100 years old. And I do, the thing that makes me sad, though, we have a science teacher that's young and pretty progressive, not as smart as her father, but still, she's getting there. But my daughter teaches science, if you don't know that, but she would love to do more labs and hands-on learning, but it's really hard for her to do that because we just don't have the facility to do it. It is one of those things that I don't know if you have a number off the top of your head, Brad. If we don't do this project and we have to remodel that science room, I know you're talking, water and sewer. I mean, $500,000 easy, right? I mean, it's crazy if it's even possible to do in that location. So that's a real need. It always scares me when we have these young teachers that aren't married to the community, so to speak, and what stops them from leaving. If we don't give them the tools they need to do their job correctly, they tend to look for places that do. She's student taught at Northern Pass, which is a really, really nice facility, and she misses that. I know she does. I hear her say it. She loves it here. She loves the kids, loves the small school, but I know that she would like to have a lab she could use. So. These are just some needs, and Brad touched on this. What we did is about a little over a year ago, the board got together and we did some walkthroughs, and that's when we got Brad involved. It's like, let's just find out what needs to be done. And at that time, we weren't thinking about building it all. We were just thinking, well, let's make a list of projects that need to be done, kind of get some ideas of cost, so we can kind of make a 5-year plan. Unfortunately, when we started that, and we started making a list, and we got estimates, it was just, this isn't going to work. We'll never be able to catch up. This is a quick list. The Jim Ford Elementary School has issues. It buckles, especially on wet years. Unfortunately, like last summer, the vans were being dry. It didn't, but the year before it did. I mean, it buckles enough where you couldn't have. If I hadn't there, luckily that fall it went down before school started. But if ever it wouldn't, we wouldn't be able to use it. That would be a problem. That is not a cheap cost. We talked to a lot of concrete guys. They're saying you'd have to tear it all out and start over. And there's just no way to fix that. And I see Brad agreeing with that. The gym wall, there's history behind this. 20 years ago or so, it sunk. FEMA got involved. They pumped concrete underneath it, I believe, and all that. Unfortunately, it's been long enough where I think it's sunk again. We replaced the roof 5 years ago. It still leaks, and it's not even the roof that leaks. It's like the wall that leaks. It's crazy that sounds. And we have not found a solution for that, so I don't even know how we would fix that, so that would be a challenge for it. Elementary roofs on an old part of the building needs to be replaced. A tile in elementary, we know has asbestos underneath it that starts cracking ways, and that will need to be replaced. The kitchen, the health inspector bugs us on that all the time. The rooms need to be remodeled, the outside tuck pointing. I think at that time we were looking at about $200,000. I'm guessing that number's gone up since a year ago we looked at that. But the biggest problem is the foundation. I mean, it's 100 years old. And so, I mean, you really put $8 million in a building that has a foundation that's 100 years old and we know where we're going. I just don't see it. I mean, but it's you guys are the decision makers. So.
Well, you still haven't fixed anything above. The foundation is gone, and that's the bottom line. You can pump all the concrete you want under a foundation. The bottom line with the foundation, it comes down to pounds per square inch. If you're putting X amount of pounds per square inch on a piece of ground that'll only hold this much and it already failed, you can pump all the concrete under you want. You're only expediting your problem by putting more concrete under it until you put a wider or better footing on it. Or you spread out the building. You make it a flat, large surface versus one compact, compressing surface. That's the bottom line. These little towns are railroad towns. They're built on water, high ground. That's all there is to it. They needed steam, so they needed water. When they built these towns, Litchfield, Marion, all these little towns. Unless you build a surface, a structure that is on a large flat surface, it is bound to fail. It doesn't matter. You can gold plate the walls. I said this a year ago when I was in this conversation. You can fix and fix and fix and fix. You fix the bricks, which consequently, by the way, again, heavy weight, again, pounds per square inch. You can fix that all you want. It's still putting more pressure on a foundation that simply cannot hold. Until you spread it out, it's that simple, it's going to fail. Okay, and brick at the end of the day is siding. Everything under that is what your mechanicals, etc., and I'm sure the architect here could explain this far, far better than I can. But
I don't know, you're doing a pretty good job.
So everything under that is what actually holds the heat, and it lets the light in, and it lets the mechanical systems, whether they're plumbing or heating or electrical, flow through them, okay, that's what it is. The siding on the outside is just that, it's just siding. So to put $200,000, let's say, into tuck pointing the siding on this building is just ludicrous. I mean, you are just making a bigger mess at the end of the day until you rebuild that. Okay, so all of this aside in my logic, because I feel like standing on a soapbox right now, at the end of the day, we can describe and state all these facts about the things that are wrong and the things that need to happen with this building, and I don't know that we're going to get any opposition to that. I don't think it could happen. The bottom line is, do you want a school here in 25 years, or do you not want a school here in 25 years? Because that's the question. That is the question. And okay, let's say worst case scenario,
I'm gonna give you this, just because we're recording it, and there's like 100 people watching, by the way.
oh boy, oh geez, okay. Okay, so let's say at the end of the day, that this doesn't happen, that this bill that's going through does not happen. It doesn't pass, for whatever reason, obviously votes are votes. Which, by the way, you need to vote always on everything. You need to vote because your opinion matters. This is our community. You got to get it out there, what you think matters on every topic. So, if you don't make that known, you're never going to know what the public actually wants. It's our community. Okay, so let's say worst case scenario, this does not go through, at least that's my worst case scenario. I'm a very big proponent of this for a lot of reasons. Okay, so let's say the district splits up, let's say it divides, and that's going to take some time, by the way. The school doesn't go away next year, it doesn't happen. Okay, a lot of these things are still going to happen regardless of it. We're still going to try to keep this school going, and all of the money, all the mill levies are going to still probably go through, and that's the bottom line. So do you keep attempting to bail a sinking ship, or do you build a new ship? It won't sink, most likely. I mean, over time, it's hard to say. I mean, I wish I could know what's going to happen in 30 years. I don't know that. I'm not that smart. But the bottom line is that it's going to cost a hell of a lot of money, one way or another. And you might as well be putting money into something that's going to have a longer life than what we're going to put the money into. And that's the bottom line, as far as I can see. We have a great school here. I've worked in a lot of schools, and I'm telling you right now, this one is of the highest caliber. And I'm not going to share names in that. You guys that know me, you know where I've worked, you know what I've done. We're sitting on the golden egg right here. This is it. So anyway, and it's ours. And we can't forget that.
You should pass it up to Liz, but hold on, Liz, we gotta get the camera on you.
No, that's right, the wall is fine. So, say 20, 25, 30 years. This is my 29th year that I've worked. 28 for Litchfield, Marion, and there was 1 year when I first started, was Litchfield High School. And so when he talks 20, 25, 30 years, here I am 30 years. I'm not gonna be here in 30 years either. Cindy, how many years have you been working? 27.
Geez, makes my 4 years look pretty small.
The hardest of the last 4 years with you. Cindy and I told the people that have started working at the school, the ones that are fresh out of college, we tell them, invest your money, because 5 years, 10 years, we used to say 20, now I have to say 30 years was like really, really fast. So it will go fast. And then they'll be talking about, when this passes, if it passes, they'll talk about the old part of the building. And that will be the old remodeled part, not the one that's already 60 years old. So, yes, 30 years, I hope to still see it going strong.
Thank you guys. You guys put it very well. I think Jason's running for some office, I'm not sure. Go ahead. And they're the same thing in high school. And I think Jason hit it right on. Nobody has said, yeah, I don't think the buildings need repair. I don't think anybody's arguing that. I think we all know that. I think education is the foundation society, and I've traveled all over the world, I've spent time in the Middle East, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know, but they purposely don't educate everybody there because they want to keep people illiterate. That's how you control people. That's what's unique about our country. We educate everybody, and there's a cost to that, obviously, but I think that's so important to have a good education system to our society. So I don't even need to go through all these individual needs. I do know the number because Brad and I talked about this. Just the HVAC and the electrical is about $5 million, is what the engineer said. If we're going to remodel the building, you can go ahead fast forward. Go ahead. This is, I just had to take a picture. And here's the problem with this. So this is the middle of the day on a Tuesday. It sprung a leak, the radiator. Then, of course, they fixed that one, and that led to the next. And it just when they took the pipe out, they showed me, you can almost pump them in your hand. I mean, I don't think those pipes are 100 years old, but they're guessing 60 to 80. They don't make pipes like that anymore. I mean, but they've all lived their life. Well, here's the problem with this. So not the fact that they drive here from Fargo 4 different times, and it's going to cost us probably 10 grand. That interfered with education. That's a classroom, and that's a 7th grade classroom. So for a week, they were missing buddies. They were here, there, wherever, and so it affected the education of those kids. And for me, that's a bigger deal than the money. I mean, the money is big, but it affected their education. That's a sad thing, I think. Go ahead. Not go on. So I guess here's what's happened, and we had the meeting last spring. I think everybody liked the idea, hey, let's just build a new neutral site. And that was a good idea, and all summer we talked about that, but the problem we ran into this summer is we just couldn't get contractors to give us numbers. Is that a fair statement, Brad? Because there's just so many questions with materials and labor shortages, and so it was probably September till we were starting to get numbers. Contractors were saying they literally couldn't get materials a year out, and so the cost of building has increased. I mean, as it always does, but it's increased more in the last 2 years. So the reality is we couldn't afford to build a brand new complete building at a neutral site. We can legally only borrow up to 10% of our assessed value. For us, that's about $17 million. If we were going to totally build a brand new K-12 at a neutral site, which we'd all love to see, it would cost us about $21 million. We just can't do it. And that's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. So the second idea then was, well, let's pick a site, tear down the old part, add on and remodel the newer part. And so we looked at both sites. We gave it a fair shake. Brad can vouch for this. The problem with Litchfield is there just isn't enough real estate there. We know that, and Jason can explain it better than anybody, but I was intrigued when we did this in Column, and we worked with Brad there too. And I said, well, let's build a two-story. That'd be better. It's not better. It's harder to build a two-story structure and more costly, right? When you talk about ADA and all that, it's a different world today than it was 100 years ago. So it has to be a one-story structure, especially Jason pointed out, on the ground we build on. So there literally isn't enough real estate in Litchfield. So it has to be here. Right? And that's good for Marion, but it's bad for Litchfield, and that's unfortunate, but it is the way it is. So did you get that slide in here? Yep. We have a little bit of a, kind of bring it up real quick. And this is from the architect. This is the current Litchfield site. This is 22,000 square feet. The addition is 37,000 square feet. The problem with that is in Litchfield, it would actually be more than that because in Litchfield, there's actually, in the new part of the building, there's actually only 2 classrooms, where over here there's like 6. So if you were going to do this project in Litchfield, it'd actually be more like 42,000 square feet. It just doesn't fit in there. So again, this is 22,000. So there just isn't a choice. There's plenty of real estate here. You can jump back. So that's what last fall we developed, and this is really our only option to build here, tear down the old part of the building, remodel the newer part. And again, I'll let Brad in a second talk about what that might look like. Remodel the newer part, and then add on an addition. And I do have some renderings for you that I'll show you when we're done here. So that's where we came to. We rough cost of about 275 square foot for the building. If you figure everything in, fees and all that's about 300 square foot. It comes to about $17 million. About $13 million dollars is what this project will cost us between the remodel and the building. So can you go ahead? Go again. I'm talking ahead of myself. So right now, it would be approximately 37,000 square of new construction, and then I think this is 17, if I remember right, of remodel of this, the newer part of this building. Go ahead. It'd be a total remodel, it'd be well, do you want to talk about that?
He talks better. He's smarter than I am. Just maybe what the remodel might look like and all.
Well, just to cover the list there, new HVAC systems, new locker rooms, bathrooms, windows. One of the things we would focus heavily on is those things that would increase the comfort of the space. So when you have walls that aren't completely insulated, we would try to upgrade that. The walls are going to be warmer. Students that are near those walls right now, if they're not insulated well, they're going to feel their heat getting pulled into the wall. And so we're trying to increase comfort at the same time.
Izzy was laughing when you said that, so I'm guessing that's true.
Yeah, you'll feel it just going right on. You just want to rotate around as you're sitting there. And so new windows, and we would look at just any opportunity to increase the energy efficiency. Because over the life of the building, energy just keeps costing and keeps costing. That's a huge cost. Insulation is one of the biggest return investments that you can put into a building. Wherever we put it, whether it's on the roof, the walls, or improving the glass, replacing the glass with better glass. And then wood floor and new bleachers in the gym. So we will look at every space, every existing space, and look for opportunities to upgrade it. And there's going to be costs and there's going to be benefits to those, so we're not going to be able to do everything. But each space will get attention, and we will present options to the board and costs and benefits and recommendations, and then they make the decisions, on which ones to take.
Thank you. And I know Brandon made a comment to me a few weeks ago. He said he actually thinks this remodel part would be nicer than the new part because of I know you like the wood beams and all that. And we keep those wood beams in such a good classroom, so it still has that kind of retro feel, so to speak. Brad and I have had a discussion many times about those things. So this would be nice. It's not like we just wouldn't spend any money on this part. It would be a total remodel of this part. So here's the bottom line. It would be a 20-year, we basically bonding money for 20 years. It's $13 million. And we figured, and I don't figure these numbers, this has to be done by a professional finance person. So that's where I got these from. That's state law. Just so you know, I'm not trying to manipulate you. When she figured it, she figured we'd borrow money for 2% because the state has guaranteed money for school construction at 2%. So all her numbers are based on 2%. Right now, we would not borrow money from that fund because you can bond money for about 1% now, and the paying premiums is what I'm told. So we would actually get the money cheaper, most likely. But we always want to use the most conservative number, so nobody can ever come back and say, "Oh, you said it was this." These are a little bit high figures, but we're going to use them. So if that's the case, at 2%, it costs us about $811,000 a year. That would be our payment on building. That payment, what it equates to, now these are averages, please understand. The average acre of farmland in our district, it would cost that acre about $2.45 a year for 20 years. I mean, that's average. If we had farmland that's above average, the evaluation of it would be a little bit more than that. If it's below average, it would be less than that. So you guys know your land and kind of where it sits. $100,000 home, like if you live in one of the communities, if your home is valued at $100,000, which I'm guessing not a lot more in small communities, but maybe I'm wrong, it will cost you $212 a year. $212 a year. If your home is valued at $100,000. But here's the catch. Go. I really believe, I've run the numbers and I'll show you this. We'll save about $350,000 by making a new facility in one location. That's the key. You save about $350 grand a year. And here's the way I came up with this. The last 4 years, we have levied $115,000 miscellaneous mills just to remodel a classroom. But we wouldn't do that anymore. It would be done, so we would not have to levy it. So that would go away. So that would save you $115 grand right away in your taxes. This is a stupid number, but we've rented, I figured out numerous times, the shuttle bus that we run between the building, morning and night, 4 or 5 shuttles, back and forth, cost us about $50,000 a year. I mean, you figure the miles, times the number of shuttles, times the number of days, times 212 a mile, it's about 50 grand. Obviously, that would go away. The other thing that we're really, I think one of the biggest needs we're facing right now is bus driver. We cannot find bus driver. Thank you, Davey, because Davey fills in all the time, and likely wouldn't need to. I don't think he uses that money to buy food. Well, maybe some of it. I really appreciate it. I mean, he helps us out all the time. He's a sub. Well, we call him a sub, but he pretty much drives every day. The reality is, we should have 5 routes, and we're running 4 because we couldn't find a driver, and we're running 4 routes with 3 drivers and subs. One of the reasons we should have 5 routes and kids get on this early is because of the shuttle. They have to be here, even if they're on Litchfield, they have to be here by about 5 to 8 to catch a shuttle going over there. So if you were at one location, it would help the routes. You could probably do it with 4 a lot easier. Would you agree? Yeah. Because you don't have to worry about that shuttle. So it would definitely help our situation where we have a lack of drivers. So that would save us 50 grand not having a shuttle. I always think we could go ahead. We would not do this until Liz wants to retire 7 years from now. But we could go down to 1 minute. When the time comes, we're in one location. Time comes. My guess is Liz will stick around at least to do one year in the building. But when the time comes, Liz retire, we go down to 1 secretary. Because of, right now we absolutely need two buildings. They're busy. If you're in one building, it would be a lot simpler. So that saves you about 40 minutes. How do I always get administration? I do it all the time. All right, now we have 3 administrators because you really have to have a building principal in each building. You have a half-time superintendent who only works a third of the time.
Oh, wait, I say that. I'm thinking of right in the second
You could pretty easily, I feel, if you're in one building, either you could have a high school principal / superintendent, or you could have one principal that does K-12 and a superintendent, and however it looks, you could, I feel you could pretty easily go down to 2 administrators, save about 50 grand. Repairs, I figured 95,000 a year, but that's actually a really low number because we also figured we're paying H.A. Thompson. That's probably more like 150. But I just used a low number. Not that you don't have repairs in a new building, because you do, but I think it's pretty safe to say it's significantly less. Would you agree? Yes. So if you had it up at 350,000 a year, now go ahead. Well, here's the catch. So if you have if the building costs you 811,000 and you minus the 350 you're saving, now your net cost is kind of 461, and you figure that out, it becomes $134 an acre, $134 an acre. Even if you figure $150 to be saved and $125, $130 in a home, I think that's a better number. But you have to figure it out saving. Because if you're going down to one building, there's no way you're not going to save money. So yeah, the building itself is costing you $245 an acre, but when you take away what you're saving, you're not going to levy that $115 anymore. You're going to save money, so it brings it down, I think, closer to that. That doesn't mean your taxes aren't going to go up 5 years, or your expenses go up and all that. That's going to happen with it out in the building. So I think that's a safer number. Now, if you're really into financing, I like numbers, but if you spend the $13 million today, that kind of becomes inflation-proof. So if I'm saving $350,000 now, 5 years from now, that's like $500,000. And 10 years from now, that's like $800,000 if you figure inflation. But the cost of repairs and stuff isn't going to go down. The cost of the 3 administrators isn't going to go down. So you're inflation-proof with this. So I really think if you think about this, and Jason said it, I think it's cheaper to build a new building. I mean, if you look at 20 years, the amount you're going to spend in 20 years, I think it's cheaper to do. Okay, go ahead. And here's, again, we hit on this, but, the cost I was figuring in, in estimates and repairs and models, $210,000. If we spend $210,000, let's say this doesn't go through, and we just spend $210,000 a year, we will never pick up. It doesn't, there's no possible way. $210,000 is what we're paying in repairs, much as trying to fix things. And again, the HVAC is what's most concerning to me. We have really struggled keeping keeping them going this year. It's been bad, and I don't think it's gonna get better. It's probably gonna get worse, so, that really number, it's not a fair number, because if we're gonna actually try to keep up and remodel both buildings, we're gonna have to figure out a way to spend millions in here, and Brandon, you seen the light
Why
bulbs.
don't you go back to that?
Only because we have this on live, and,
Why don't you go back to that slide where you had $5 million in repairs
oh, that's the HVAC.
for the HVAC?
That's the heating system.
Heating and electricity.
Yeah, just for the heating.
Heating and electricity.
Okay.
I mean, in my mind, what sense would that make to spend $5 million? I mean, is that a real number, $5 million to replace the heating system? And that would be for both schools?
Correct. No, I don't think
That's just absurd. I mean, why would you want to spend that amount of money? Where would you go about getting that amount of money?
I think Brandon Enger is the right man.
I mean, for the rest of it.
It's a $1 million question. Now, I unfortunately don't have an answer. I mean, you would have to still come back and do some kind of bond. The board has no way of raising that kind of money without borrowing that kind of bond. So you'd actually have to come back and still do some kind of bond. But now you just bring a bond and put it into two old buildings. It's the problem. If we had one building, we could maybe.
And when you did a bond referendum, would the community have to vote on that?
Yep. 60%. Like this one. Yeah, no
Well,
doubt.
that's the thing about the vote that's upcoming here in a few weeks. There are two issues on that, both are pass for this thing to fly. That's the bottom line.
And I will show that. So, I mean, you're right, Brandon, and to me, as a superintendent, to recommend to the board, okay, this thing fails, okay, let's try to raise, $8 million to renovate two buildings. I don't know that I can, in good faith, make that recommendation, because it doesn't make sense to me to put $8 million into buildings that are 100 years old and the foundation is getting work at. And it's just not logical in my mind. So I hate to say this, and if it fails, I'm not like we close next year, but you have 5-10 years from these buildings, but that's probably, that's pushing it. So I think Jason's right. I think it's as simple as we want to look at 25 years from now. I think that's what should be on the ballot. Unfortunately, we didn't win it that way. Good question, Brandon. I don't have an answer for you, unfortunately.
Do you want to go with this one?
Yeah, let's have some fun here. Maybe Brad wants to talk through this since he did all the work on it, but I'll kind of guide him. Go ahead. These are just some, right now, this is maybe a little bit of dream work. What we really have to do at this point is, we needed a square footage number. If you're going to put something on the ballot, you have to have a dollar amount. So most of the work is made on what kind of square footage do we need? What's this going to look like? But based on that, these guys have kind of done here's what it could look like. Is that a good way of explaining this? So this is most likely, this would be what it could look like. So there's a few pictures. I actually like, I think, the number 4 better. Can you see this? This would be like the front entrance. Same. Okay, this one here. Only because let me point out how this is looking. First of all, we're gonna get a lot of dirt in to make those mountains in the background. We've had fun. If anybody has some extra dirt for us, hold on to it. This year we did a ski resort around this here is the current. This is where we're sitting right now. This is the current gym that you're sitting in right now. And then this is what we call the new part of the building that would be remodeled with a bit of an addition on the end of it. Again, this is the commons area, which also means serves as a lunchroom. So as you walk into the building, that'd be the first thing you see. Has anybody been to either Morris County North or Collins New School? Very similar to that. You walk in, commons area. Again, it also serves as a lunchroom for that dual purpose. And this would be the elementary room, wing, middle school wing. This would be the new addition right there. The outside is just that's not really been planned, it's just what it could look like, but that's not necessarily but that's kind of how this building would look. Would you agree? And if you want perspective, Amy's house is right here.
We're standing on his roof right now.
Yeah, right here is kind of where the old part of the building is, which obviously would get torn down. You can go ahead one more, I think. That's me right there. I think that'd be nice.
That's the daycare side.
Oh, yes, thank you. Well, that's it. I'll let Renee talk about that. She's got to talk too.
Oh, I get to talk too.
For a long time, Tom and I discussed a daycare, and Tom was like, oh, I don't know, Maria, we can have daycare, what are we gonna do with this? And back and forth, kind of went back and forth, and I'm like, no, there's a real need for daycare in these communities, and all the world North Dakota daycares have been an issue. And we have great daycare providers in this community now, but we just need more. Yeah, we just need more daycares, and we need more people that can help run these daycares. So we put in on the end of the elementary wing a daycare facility. So it would attach onto the preschool at this point, so it could be a larger facility if there were days the preschool wasn't run and things like that. But it was one of the needs that I have heard from the community for a long time, and even my daycare providers that I talk to are like, oh, I'm turning kids away. I just don't have enough room. So that was one of the things that we really talked about, and I got Tom to get on board with me. So the daycare is on that end of that elementary wing there, and it'll be one of those things that they can use their kitchen in there. It's part of the whole community as it is, and along with other things that we put in there, like the library will have access to the outside. And we're not just thinking about the school as just the elementary school and the high school, but really a community center that we can have for the whole community to come together, because that's what we need.
Thank you. Renee's a hard person. I'm a head person. I'm like, I take care. But then she's like, okay, look at these families. They have to take their kids to Valley City or to Jamestown for daycare. And you know what? When they're done going to daycare there, guess what? They go to preschool there, then they go to school there. I'm like, oh, we're losing kids. Okay, I'm on for it. So yeah, it is true. It's all small towns. Daycare is a real problem. We have times when there's teachers that actually can't come to school because they don't have daycare. So it is definitely a need. So I think it fits really nice as part of the project. I'm going to tell you this, and I don't know if I should say this or not, but 6-7 years ago when I called this project, obviously there were some people that voted no, and there were some people that are very strong no's. Probably the biggest person that was against the project about 2 weeks ago came up to me and said, you know what, I was wrong. This is the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm so glad it was there. That was the guy that was probably the most against it, is from the northern part of the district. And so I have not heard of one person in the community say we should have done this. Haven't heard of it. So I think that's a big statement. The other thing I get from people is, yeah, we're almost climbing, whatever it starts going down. Again, being a numbers person, I think if your enrollment starts going down, that's when you want to be more efficient, not less efficient. We are not efficient right now running school buildings. So if we ever do see that enrollment decline, we need to be efficient. So now is the time to make ourselves efficient so we can weather those times if that comes. But again, I mean, the foreseeable future, it looks really good for you guys. I do want to show you the balance here. Because it is a strange balance. Jason was alluding to that because of just the way the state law is. There's actually 2 things we have to vote on. The first measure is right on top. Should we borrow $13 million to build this building, 17,000 square foot addition? Remodel and about 32,200 new. Yes or no? This takes 60% of the voters, not of the people that can vote, but 60% of the people that vote have to vote yes. And then the second question, it's state law. This goes back like a century. You can only borrow 5% of your assessed value unless the voters say you can borrow 10%. You can't go to 7 or 8. The board tried to get to the 5 or 10. So right now we're still under the old system, which is 5%. I don't know that there's anybody that can build a building today so we're on 5% of their assessed value. So everybody that's anywhere to say that the building moves it to 10. So we also need a yes on this. In order to borrow up to 10% of our assessed value, you have to vote yes. Now, that doesn't mean the board can, our assessed value would have about 17 million. They're asking for 13. That doesn't mean they can go get another 4 million. They have to come back to 4 people. If they're only asking for $13 million. That's all this project costs us. So this also needs to be a yes, but only at a 50%. So basically, if you're for a project, you need to be full yes on both. Brandon, do you have anything to add? I really appreciate you coming down.
No, unless there's
I'm
questions.
assuming there'll be some questions. A lot of people have seen this a few times. Again, I really appreciate you guys looking at this, and I'm just happy that you're here. But I really don't want people to vote no and not be informed. If you're here and you get the facts, you want to vote no, that's your right. But I'm just glad you guys are here getting informed, because that's the best way of making an informed decision, I guess. Any questions at all, or comments, and we will hang around too if you want to ask one-on-one. Any questions for Brad? I'm going to give you this just because we already report. I mean, that's out on the work to the world. Thank you.
Well, I just kind of asked Cindy about this. Can a letter be sent out to the patrons so that everybody knows they have to ask for the ballot? Because I was under the mistaken impression that since I signed up for absentee ballots with the county, that I didn't have to ask for
You get one
this,
on back there.
that I would get one automatically.
You asked the right person, Cindy.
The reason,
We don't really have a mailing list. We have a mailing list for all the parents, but we would definitely miss some people.
and the reason that
Good, really good question.
The reason that you did, that was held in conjunction with the county and probably even the state election. And so those forms are used for all elections. And so when you went through and checked those, we were having a school board election, so they sent it to us. So right now, they're not having an election, so they're not handling any of this. So it's strictly the school district that's handling it. We posted, if someone can't physically come in and vote the day of the election, we've got 2 different places on the website where the request for an absentee ballot is on. They can be filled out, they can be brought in, they can be emailed to me, and I will send out a ballot. There is a little different procedure if you're carrying someone else's ballot, then we have a little bit of a different procedure to do. We honestly wouldn't know where to begin to get a list of everyone that's living in this district.
I mean, I think we could certainly, get an all call, and it's been in the paper, and get
but
some.
she said everybody doesn't
Just
get
so that they're clear about that even though they check that on their absentee ballot for the county, that's not going to get them a ballot.
I think we just all need to try to spread the word, I think, because you're right, you're not going to get a ballot unless you request. And it is another good point, though. You can vote now, like if you're not going to be around, or if you're afraid to vote, you can stop at any school during the day, fill out the form to get an absentee ballot, hand us the form, we hand you the ballot, you vote, it goes to put it in the seal envelope, so no one will see it, goes in the ballot box. So we probably had 30 people vote already, so you can vote. From 4 days before the election, you can start. So if you're afraid that you're not going to be around that day, certainly if the weather looks bad, even if there is a blizzard of blizzards, the election has to take place that day. We can't change it at this point anymore. It's state law. That it is happening on February 8th. So, yeah, please, if anybody's can't be around, get that absentee ballot. You have to request it. There's a form that you have to fill out to request an absentee ballot. The best option would be to call Cindy at the elementary school and ask us. But you can stop at either school and get that.
Can you repeat exactly who's eligible to vote? Is it, age, land property owners, living here, all of that?
Great question. Yes, you have to live in the district to vote. Some people think I will land here and go. That is state law. You have to live. You have to be 18 years old, of course. 18 years or older. You have to have an ID, and you have to live in the district for at least the last 30 days. So that's a really good question, because some people think just because they'll land here, they vote. But unfortunately, that's the law says you have to live here.
And anyone who's 18 years and older can vote. And just a note about absentee voting.
And a note about absentee voting. The ballots coming back to us have to be, if they're mailed, they have to be postmarked by midnight of February 7th. Anything after that will not be eligible to be counted.
And on the night of the 8th, the judges count the votes, and we'll know what that count is, but it's not official till February 15th, when the board can canvass the results, and the point of that is in case there's some absentee ballots coming in the mail. So we will know on the night of the 8th, but that won't be official. The official ballot will be, the official count will be on the 21st. What did I say?
15.
Oh, the 21st, okay. On the 21st, 13 days after the vote.
Our former students, alumni of this high school that are in college, and are technically still registered as voters in this city or in this district, are they eligible to vote for this?
If their ID says, if their address in their ID is in our district, yes.
Okay, so that, call your kids.
Yep. Because there's been a lot of those. Now, this evening, my son Wyatt is in NSU, but his ID still says, 1076 Street, call him. So if there's an election, call him, he can walk in and call him, he can vote.
And they have to have that ID with them the day of election if they come in to personally vote.
You have to have that ID, it's state law. We didn't make this up. We couldn't make stuff up. You have to, even if we all know you and you lived here all your life, you have to have that ID.
We're not in Pennsylvania.
And if you haven't, if you just recently moved here, but your license, driver license doesn't say your address for here, what do you do?
Again, so if you just moved here, but you haven't changed your license yet, there's something else you can do.
You have to have been a resident here for 30 days. That's just the total rule. If you have not changed that driver's license yet, but you've had your utility bills, your lease, whatever that states when you moved or that you've got one and that address is on there, your current Marion address, that is what you need to bring a copy of along. We will keep that copy because that will have to be attached to your application and to the people doing the election that day will have to keep that copy. So just keep that in mind, that will have to be a copy.
Thank you, Cindy. Great question. Anything else? I guess we don't know. This one, maybe, this is going to be hard. Okay, good question. He wanted me to, that's asked me on the board, he just tell me what to do, I guess. There was a big question about what's going to happen to school in Litchfield, and that is a really legitimate question. And we talked with a lot of people in Litchfield. We actually are trying to find what would be a good use to repurpose it. At one time, we actually talked to the fire department with Litchfield. They actually took a look at it. We had Tony Bruce talk to them a lot, and because they're looking for kind of a facility to store stuff. But they came to the same conclusion we did. Well, we could build new for cheaper than what it costs to repurpose that school. So we haven't found a good solution. And then when we formally talked to a lot of people, the consensus was they would like to see it torn down. So that is part of it. That is part of the vote. So that is what will happen. That building will get torn down. So we get cleaned up. The school will be responsible for maintaining the lots, keeping them mowed, and then with the goal is hopefully that at some point somebody would want the lots, maybe build a house or something like that. They kind of working on maybe a building authority over there to take them over, but the school will be responsible for tearing it down and cleaning it up, making it look nice. It would be nice to say how we can turn it into Nome, but let's be honest, that's the absolute exception. There's many more cases of where the schools just sat there and become an eyesore and home to bats and who knows about that. For those of you that know, unfortunately in Pullman, we thought we were smart to put it up for auction, got $8,000 for it, and we're pretty excited. And you guys know Water, right? I forget his name, maybe you guys know him. Somehow. Oh, I don't remember. He lived there for about a year or two at church there, whatever that means in his language. I hate to say this, but unfortunately he died, and he no longer lives there, and now I wasn't sitting there. So that wasn't, a lot of people saying, wow, we should have torn it down. That was bad idea to keep it quick.
So are any of those
of that 13 million figured in for tearing that down then?
Correct. Because we also have, we have about $250,000 in ESSER money kind of stashed away, more for that purpose. And we know that right now, bonds are paying a premium, like significant, so yes. And we also have our general fund is in really good shape, and so, yes, that's it. And that's an argument, because some people still think we should have turned it into something, but that's kind of a pipe dream to some degree. Generally, that doesn't happen. Good question. You're going to tell me to do something, you have a question.
Well, I've heard a lot of comments from people wondering why we decided to not build a second gym. Bigger, better, so we could hold more events. What our rationale was.
There's the answer right here, money. I mean,
Right, so what did we come up with a price for the gym?
the gym, again, it's certainly one of your most expensive square footages because of high walls, et cetera. So it had tacked on 3 to 4 million. Brad, safe statement?
No.
Honestly, I don't recall, but it was a big number.
Yeah. This thing with the square footage, high walls, it's not a normal place. So the reality is, so now you're really pushing up against that 14 million or 17 million mark. I mean, we had some plans with that in it, without a question. But I think what we decided then, kind of keep it in, like, okay, so the south of this building, we're not adding on. That's going to be kind of empty parking lot. So if, let's say 5 years from now, things look really good, your enrollment's so high, you have a lot of kids playing sports, and you have that paid down for 5 years, you could add on. I mean, that's kind of I don't want to say that's a plan, but it's there as an option in the future, So that's why the design is somewhat the way it is. Given that space back there open, it's going to be easy to, expand it if you ever want to do that in a few years down the road. But the cost is certainly was the biggest factor. And the $1 million question is, will this cost of construction come down? So should we wait 2 years? But I mean, the reality is, let's look at history. I don't know that it's ever comes down. I've seen Brad and Jason both shaking their head like that, it never comes down. I just don't think we're going to see it cheaper. I know this, 6, 7 years ago, Collins was more square footage for about $50. So that's pretty accurate. I think it was 7.1 million. I want to say their new square footage was close to 50. A lesser amount, I know. Isn't that crazy? So I just hope 7 years from now, say, I wish we would have done this. Any other questions? Any questions for Brad? Really appreciate the help you've given us.
So to pass this measures and stuff, we need 60% of the total votes that day, or
Counting the votes in the last, this month.
yeah,
People are ready.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, it's not 60% of eligible voters, it's 60%
Okay.
of the votes cast.
cast then.
Good
Yes.
question.
Okay, so we want all the good casters voting.
And some people are worried about someone's going to vote 5 times. That might happen in Pennsylvania. There's no way it can happen here. We literally have, 3, 4 judges in both polling sites. At the end of the night, they come together, they look at it. We're hoping to get like 200 votes. If someone votes more than once, they are going to get caught, okay? I mean, it's just ridiculous. They're probably going to go to jail. So there's no way anybody can be able to cheat in this election. It's just too small of an area to pull that off.
Was there a slide in there, or a rough kind of question layout?
We could. I haven't pulled up. You want to grab one? We have another question here.
I was just curious if you guys, I didn't see any touched on it, were they going to do anything for the outdoor activities, football, basketball, etc.?
Yeah, the outside that you saw there, that's kind of just to make it look pretty. That's not in the immediate plan. But yeah, I mean, I would hope if we have a new building, we would do things like that. I mean, I don't know if we'll get a football field, but I mean, we're not building on the old ball diamond, so we're going to need a playground. what I'm hoping is, when we sell those bonds and the premium as much as this is right now, give us a fair chunk of money to do things like that with. Gotta think, like Watford City sold $35 million project recently, and they got like, what do you say, $3.5 million premium for their bonds. So if that would happen to us, we'd probably get $14 million, and only have to pay back $13 million, which makes no sense. But school bonds are a really, really, really safe investment, because if you don't pay your taxes, guess what? Somebody else will pay it for you. So, I mean, investors love to buy school bonds, because it is like very safe. So they actually pay a premium up front to get the bond. Now, we don't know that for sure, but that's what's happening right now. So in my mind, some of that money can be used for those things that really make house look nice. And we certainly ended up, Renee's ready to stash money for the playground.
Yes, I have.
Great question. I think the biggest thing is just get out and talk to your neighbors. Word of mouth, can't beat that. We can't spend school money to go out and make a flyer that says, "Oh yes." Anybody else could, but I mean, we can't do that. We have to try to stay neutral. I mean, obviously, we can say we need this water, but we can't promote it as a yes vote. Any other questions? Thank you guys very much for coming out. Anything else?
The layout?
Oh, I'm sorry. Again, this is, there is a building committee that's made up of, who adheres on the committee? I know a few of you are. So they've actually put a lot of work into this. We've met many times, and sometimes just by email and such, but I think it's a separate attachment. If, no, that's not it. But, so we've worked back and forth a lot with architect, and this isn't like in stone, but it kind of rough.
Maybe that's still not
What happened, we switched computers here, and maybe I didn't even know what it attached to.
I don't think you sent me that one. Unless I have it.
And I could talk you through it too if you went down the slide or two.
Let me go back to slideshow.
Well, no, I didn't here.
Oh.
There.
Put it the other way. While they're looking for it, let me talk to you. Go one more. There. So, again, they're going to look for the better layout. I can talk you through it real quick. Right now, this is the building would kind of be a science lab. It's our biggest room, obviously, because we do have the lab and the classroom. We would want to have the same room because one thing that's changed about education a lot is it's a lot more individualized based on the kids' needs. So if you had your lab in the same room as your classroom, you could have like maybe half the kids are in the lab, you'd have a kid working on a worksheet, a kid taking a test, and more individualized. That's the problem with where it's laid out right now. One science room is way in this building, the lab is way in the other side of the building, so it's really hard to do. So we have them in one room, which would be down here. Then you'd have all your classrooms, the high school classrooms in this area. You'd have a fitness center that the community would have access to. You have your library right here that would also give community access to. Commons, the gym, you have your music section down here. Your middle school rooms here, elementary, preschool, and then the daycare. And the reason they're next to each other is because on days when we don't have preschool, those kids would like to be in the daycare, so they'd actually be able to use both of those rooms, so we have a little bit more room for our daycare. There you go. So that's what it would look like. Again, this is the current gymnasium. This is the current, no, that's not the current one.
Oh, he had the right one. Tyler, this is the wrong one.
Okay.
That was like going like 17,000, we're on 17,000. I think we're actually driving Brad crazy, like, Brad, we have one more change. I think you guys are used to that already.
That's it.
Now, here we go. So, again, you have your science, the science lab, high school rooms. We do have a spare room built in there, if it ever gets cheaper to build. So we again, people always ask what the capacity would be. I mean, let's say your enrollment kept going up. I mean, I would say you could pretty easily serve at least 250 kids in this building, possibly more depending how they're spread out. So you definitely have room if you keep going up. Again, library, outdoor access, fitness center. You have new locker rooms, multi-purpose room. Because being in one building, now suddenly you have high school and elementary, so you could actually have 2 plans going on at a time, depending on what they're doing in here. We just added an archery program to our elementary, to our K-12, well, maybe not K, but 4 to 12. So this is actually big enough to do the archery in there. And that's going to be, we haven't really started it yet when it works, but it's going to be a really popular program, I think. Is you laughing at me?
This is the first you heard about the archery.
Oh, okay, you excited about that? Yeah, and it's actually really fun. Other schools have done it, and it's been a really popular program in life skill. Music room, storage, you have your smart lab. Some of these are kind of centrally located, they'll be used by both. Same with the special ed room. Your middle school rooms, teacher work room, and your elementary rooms, with this being the preschool connected to the daycare. Again, a separate entrance for the daycare, so you wouldn't have to have the kids come to the whole school and such. I think that, I have been convinced that I think the daycare will be a really good thing for the community, because it is an absolute issue, and also communities would certainly be really well.
So Renee, can you explain about why the 6th grade?
Sure.
Curriculum? Because that's, people I'm hearing from Litchfield were upset because the 6th graders were moved to Marion, but that's not why.
Yeah, a lot of that really is, well, first of all, there wasn't room in Litchfield because we had to split them up because the classes being so big, but most of the curriculum is the same world, are more geared toward the middle school. It kind of was hard going from 6th grade into 7th grade. That's a big junction. So now you have kind of almost 3 schools. You have an elementary, which would be preschool through 5th grade. Then your middle school is 6, 7, 8. They kind of have their own curriculum, and then you start high school. So it's kind of a junction from elementary to high school. And I think it's a really good process. Big schools have been able to do it forever. Like the Fargo's, when I taught Fargo, I taught in middle school. It was 8th and 9th. So it's just, I think we've kind of taken that concept and just made it an easier transition from elementary to high school for students. So now being in one building, this would be really nice, because now you have your middle schoolers right there. They can get title services, things like that. You can do some in high school, you can do some work in elementary. I'd be really excited about the JET program, get some high school kids down in the elementary classrooms, hopefully encouraging them to become teachers.
So I'm curious, once the vote has passed,
This is a tough question. I don't know who's going to ask it.
how long is it estimated to take to build?
Really good question. I might defer to Brad, and he's trying to avoid it too. It's so tough to tell, right? I mean, it's a matter of we can get contractors to bid it, but do you want to talk us through that process maybe? Did you hear the question? Yep.
Well, that's really 2 questions, because when can we get the plans ready, and when would be the ideal time to bid? This last year has been just a wild year. We've had buildings that were ready to go out to bid that would have been no problem, let's say the year before, but the pre-engineered buildings, every week the delivery was going out a month, and it got to be 54 weeks out from when we completed our plans to get some products. So our goal is to get the design done and then assess when and how we're bidding. And we may have to change some material choices just because of availability. Not everything that was available a couple years ago is available now. But we get through it. I mean, this is something we normally do, it's just a little bit more challenging right now. So I think our goal would be to move as quickly, as the board would want us to. It typically takes a few months ready for bidding. So I would say that in a few months' time, we'd be ready to go out, and then it's up to the board. We'd give them a recommendation as to, is that a good time to go out for bids?
That's a nice thing I like about what Brad does. I mean, he can tell us, let's bid it this month because it's going to be cheaper. I mean, that's part of what they do that I have zero idea on. So I think it depends on that somewhat.
Yeah, prices were, mechanical equipment was at one point up 25% last year. And so we delayed bidding that part of certain projects, just delayed that part and bid other parts and waited till that stabilized a little bit. Things have stabilized more now, but cost increases they're just hard to track down right now. Very volatile.
So what's the time frame from if we start, like the whole, like the project? Is it like a year-long project, a 6 months? Like once we actually get started?
The construction time will be somewhere around a year and possibly longer. So there may be phases in that. So we're building the new, but yet you're occupying here, or that has to be figured out. So there's a lot of operational input that we're going to need from the board to coordinate the process of construction, and it could lengthen construction. Remodeling will take less time than the new construction, and then time of year that we go out. Right now, contractors are building mostly year-round, whereas many years ago, when I first started, they wouldn't build as much in the winter, but now they're going year-round. But it's more expensive to start a project in the winter. It's just more costly. Heat, extra heat and things, so.
And I think when he says a year, it's kind of like 2 summers in a year, right? I mean, that's kind of the key or something.
Yep, that would be ideal. And if you give if you squeeze a contractor's schedule, you're going to pay for it. So we we'll contact some contractors. I've actually had some contractors contact me already.
I've had a couple call me and I've just kind of, so there's people looking for work.
There are. This project will be attractive to contractors because of its size and because of its location. So there's going to be contractors from Bismarck, from Fargo, and potentially from Aberdeen, because you're right in between all those locations, and there's very capable contractors in all those communities.
And simple things like we're working on a school calendar for next year, crazy enough, but we kind of been delay passing that stuff to the vote, because if it does go through, let's try to get school a week earlier, just to kind of get that head start. So just simple things like that we can do to make it easier for contractors. Trying to think here, you may be last to graduate from middle school. I'm not sure. Just year old, right? I could do. He's a sophomore. He might be a first one graduate. Any other questions? Thank you guys again for coming out. Appreciate it. Get your neighbors home. Have a very good night. Thank you. Stay warm.